Good evening. Welcome to this LaRouche PAC podcast. I'm Susan Kokinda, and I'm joined by Brian Lantz with the LaRouche PAC economics team. Today is April 13th, 2023. This is going to be the first of several discussions which we have with Brian, where we're going to be exploring some of the very dramatic proposals that Donald Trump has made, which he calls his Agenda 47. That is what he will do if Americans choose to make him the 47th president of the United States. When you look at the body of what Trump has proposed in these initiatives, one word jumps out at me, and that is revolutionary, because he has vowed to take a sledgehammer to globalism. He has vowed to throw the neocons and the warmongers out of positions of power and to clean up the deep state. And let's be serious, he's making those proposals from a very different position than when he came in 2017. That is, he now knows what he's up against in terms of its full fury. And they know too. They know that he is threatening their entire system, not just strategically, but also economically. So in the recent weeks, most people's eyes have been on the lawfare side of the attacks on President Trump, the recent indictment and the probable coming indictments. But we're going to look at something less obvious and something which, frankly, I think scares the enemies of this nation and of mankind more than anything. And that is the vision which Donald Trump is putting forward for a future free of the globalist system. Now, we're doing this because very few Americans, very, very few Americans know anything about this. In fact, we found that most Trump supporters are not aware, or certainly not fully aware, of what President Trump has been putting forward. That's why we've created a new resource on our website, which I'm going to share with you, where you can go to the LaRouchePAC website under the Our Campaigns button and find Trump's Agenda 47. And we have links to most of his significant economic and foreign policy proposals. These are both transcripts and videos, and they're all like short 5 minutes, as well as our own coverage of this. So I encourage people to use that resource on our website and help us spread the word about what President Trump is proposing. So, as I say, this is going to be the first of several discussions I have with Brian on the implications of some of the Agenda 47 items that he's put forward, especially in the economic realm. So I want to start with the one which is entitled A Quantum Leap in the Standard of Living for Americans. And I think, again, the word that springs to mind is indeed revolutionary, because what he outlines in this, he's got 3 pillars in this proposal. One is for the construction of 10 brand new cities in the United States, which he calls freedom cities, animated by new technologies. And he also calls for baby bonuses so that we can have a baby boom. Now, some might look at this particular proposal and see a series of interesting initiatives. But for Brian and those of us who've studied Lyndon LaRouche's economic policies for a long time, it's clear that it will take a complete change in our economic outlook to do these things, to start building, to have a quantum leap in the standard of living, and to be able to support more people. So Brian, start out by giving us a picture of the implication of this proposal and what we would have to do to actually realize it.
Well, yeah, I think, and he stressed the need to create the conditions for for young families to have households at a reasonable price as part of that package, contributing to the baby boom and the up to 10 new cities. Yeah, a total reconceptualization of economics from what most people think of as economics today. You know, the stock market and the ups and downs and inflation and this kind of thing. You're talking about rebuilding the physical economy of the United States, as you know, Susan. I mean, you can't build 10 new cities in the United States. You can't get a quantum leap in standards of living. Standards of living have been falling for decades, real standards of living. That's why we don't have children. And so you're talking about a revolution. And in a nutshell, you can't do that without national credit and national banking. And there's a lot of people out there like suddenly waving their arms around about, you know, Hamiltonian economics. This is on the fringe kind of, you know, among intellectuals, certain Washington, D.C. conservative circles about creating conditions for this or that or whatever, but they won't offend the donor class. They won't take on the City of London and Wall Street. So they're left trying to just come up with really baby pablum, little contributions. Well, we'd like to tweak this and tweak that and make it. No, you got to get a quantum leap. I mean, just starting with energy, we've discussed it before. We need 1,000 gigawatts of nuclear capacity in this country. I mean, that's base load capacity, 24/7 capacity to build out the energy that would power an expansion of the underlying physical economy of the United States. I think, you know, as well, a quantum leap here in turn for households and young households and new cities. Well, what is a living wage? What really is a living wage? I mean, you really need, you have to return to the circumstances and not going back, it's going forward. We have to have circumstances in which a single paycheck, you know, can support a household, you know, where one of the parents can be there to raise the children. You know, again and again, polls show today, you know, millennials, Gen Z, whatever, women want to be mothers to 2 or 3 children, you know, or more, but they want to have, you know, on average 2 to 3 children. It's not happening right now because the circumstances don't allow it. So you've got to create a real functioning living wage. You know, on the other end of it, on retirement, you know, look, only 50% of industrial employees, that's including white collar and all the rest. I'm not just talking about heavy industry. Only 50% participate in retirement plans. I mean, people don't save. They don't have the extra to save for, retirement. Just to give you an idea of some of the flam out there, there's a proposal, Marco Rubio's proposed it. Well, maybe we should let people draw from their Social Security before retirement to help pay for their expenses today, for their households today. Well, then what are they going to have to retire on, right? I mean, you know, this is just shortchanging everybody. This is inside the fishbowl, you know. This is all thinking inside the fishbowl when we got to get out, and that's what President Trump is saying. We got to get out of the fishbowl here, and that's what scares the oligarchy. That's what scares the donor class, and of course, Trump doesn't care about the donor class.
Well, he's at war with the donor class.
Yeah.
Well, since you bring up the question of retirement, we should note that one of his Agenda 47 proposals is hands-off Social Security and hands-off Medicare,
Absolutely.
Which certainly distinguishes him from the Wall Street Republicans, too many of which populate Washington, D.C.
Yes.
Let's sort of build on this question of leaps in the standard of living. But couple it with the fact that he's saying we need more people. So, I mean, we're all familiar with less developed countries that have constantly growing populations, but they're getting poorer and poorer because of the economic circumstances of their country. So how do you accomplish getting more people at a higher standard of living?
Yeah, I think that brings up a set of paradoxes. A country, Hungary, the Orban government in Hungary has initiated very, positive pro-family policies, subsidies to young families, increasing subsidies the more children they have, even help in buying a home. It's a substantial program. They've managed to get a certain bump in new childbirths, rate of childbirths, but it's not really large by itself. Europe, in Finland, to have a child costs $60, in terms of the total costs. In the United States, even if you have health care, a young family is going to pay between $3,000 and $5,000 to have a child, even with health care, because of deductibles and all this, the insurance predators pile on, Wall Street insurance predators pile onto these health insurance programs. But even that, you don't see a big boost, there in terms of child rearing. I think it's interesting. I just want to counterpose, when Trump was in the White House, elected 2016, took office, as you said, in 2017, for the next 2-3 years, we had a boost of new births in the red states, 1 to 2% increase in birth rates over those 3 years, 2-3 years, and a corresponding decline in the blue states. That's a San Diego study. I'm not putting a huge amount of weight on that, but nonetheless, the reason I'm raising it is goes to this question of scientific and technological optimism about the future of the country. President Donald Trump is once again calling Americans to say, look, we're going to the frontier, as he said in making this proposal for building up to 10 new cities in the West on federal land, right? Where 50% of it's locked up right now. 50% of all the land in the West is locked. He's saying, no, let's start building some cities there. Let's do it right. But he's also, it's Project Artemis, going to the moon and Mars and beyond. It's the initiatives to say, look, we're not going to sit around here stuck in the mud. And if you spread that optimism again, which began to catch on in the Trump first presidency, which is why he was gone after hammer and nail, these impeachment efforts, all of this just crap, was because it wasn't just him, he was mobilizing the American people for something greater. So I think that's really critical. If you have that kind of renewed spirit, frontier, if we will, what want to call it that, echoing John F. Kennedy, a frontier spirit, new frontier spirit, combined with, the kinds of help that young families need under these current circumstances, that would go in the right direction. Beyond that, you need Glass-Steagall. You've got to deflate the entire artifice of financialization and speculation that's driven these prices up. And simultaneously, you got to grow the physical economy. So you're actually effectively devaluing the costs because you're increasing the productivity of your workforce. So the prices of things start coming down as they used to. The prices of cars came down with the Model T. Again and again through technological revolutions, which depends on capital investment primarily, you can accomplish the devaluation of costs, or a lowering of costs, and that makes households, everything else available. And of course, critical to that is energy, not just energy in terms of energy kilowatts, but producing energy with nuclear technology and then moving to fusion. You're talking about upgrading the skill levels, the productivity of your workforce in that process. So this is part of the quantum leap, really. I hope that's that's filling out a picture of broad strokes.
It's to get people thinking in different terms, because if you're some typical idiotic Democrat, a quantum leap in the American standard of living would be just give them more money. And of course, we know where that's gotten us,
Yeah.
which is more inflation. So today, you've shared these figures and I looked them up for Wayne County, Michigan, how much you need per month to raise a family of 4. Now, I grew up in Michigan in the 50s and the 60s. When I saw these figures, I almost fell off my chair, because today to raise a family, just make ends meet and raise a family of 4 is nearly $7,000. And you don't even get that in most auto industry jobs anymore.
How much? What was the figure again?
Huh?
What was the figure again?
$7,000 a month.
Oh, okay, 7,000
a month.
Yeah.
And unless you've been grandfathered into a well-paying auto job, which you've never lost in 40 years, you're not even going to come close to that. So, it's not a question of the amount of money. It's what you say, bringing the cost down through increasing the production, but doing that by getting quantum leaps in technology, which is how you get the quantum leaps in the actual standard of living.
Yeah. An auto worker in Germany makes over $60 an hour. And the auto companies in Europe, up until the sanctions policy,
Until they ran out of energy.
right, were profitable, because they were innovative, high tech. Each one of those workers was a productive, you could say an order of magnitude greater than the average American worker, not because the average American worker isn't capable of being productive, but if there isn't the capital intensity, it doesn't happen.
Well, that sort of points, and I want to say to people that we're going to be filling out this picture of the 10 new cities in all of their manifestations, what it would take, where they would be, why we haven't done it in the last century. We're going to be looking at all of these things over the course of a number of discussions. But I want to wrap this one up with the following counterposition, because as we've talked about, as we've presented Trump's proposal to people in the course of our organizing, we often get back people saying, well, isn't this the same thing as the World Economic Forum's 15-minute cities? Why anybody would think Donald Trump would be proposing anything like that is a mystery to me. But Brian, why don't you address that?
Well, 15-minute cities. I mean, you think about it, that's what life used to be back, in the 14th or 15th century, which of course is where the World Economic Forum crowd would like to take us, where people basically lived and died in the same place and never ventured beyond their village or their part of the ghetto or slum or whatever, no, the point here, and Trump obviously has this concept, is to increase mobility, to increase the capacity of people to see the world, participate in the world. Even more importantly than see it is actually participate in it, and so that's the conception. If a modern city to be as a productive city, remember that's the biggest distinction maybe, is to say, look, Trump is talking about productive cities. You're talking about cities being built that can take advantage of mining resources. If you're talking about the western part of the United States, taking advantage of processing of those minerals, uranium for nuclear fuel, for building small modular reactors, or 1 gigawatt, 1.1 gigawatt nuclear reactors, and similar sorts of projects, because that's what the country needs. Not just for that city, but to sell beyond the city. You're plugging cities in this case, into a whole network of the national economy and raising the standard of living of the entire country. So it's as LaRouche used to talk about the worldwide cup of coffee. We can't even get a cup of coffee, without ships to bring the beans. Where does the titanium that goes into the steel and the ship come from, et cetera, et cetera. You break it down, it takes the whole world to get that cup of coffee, cup of Java into your hands. And young people can understand that as well as anyone else. And young people is what this country's got to be about. And that's what Trump is about. And that's what we're about. And we got to fill this out, because Trump is saying, hey, I want ideas. I want people to compete as to how to build these 10 new cities, design these 10 new cities. He wants a lot of input on this. We should help provide it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I hope we've given people a little bit of a window into a very different future, very opposite of the World Economic Forum, of course. And if, to my thinking, if you want to, disabuse anybody of the silliness that Trump's proposal is the same of theirs, remember, Donald Trump wants more people. The World Economic Forum wants far, far, far fewer people. So we're dealing with two completely different views of man and views of what the future should be. So thanks for opening this window for us, Brian. We're going to open it a little bit more. In the next discussion, we're going to talk about those 10 new cities, but we're going to do it from the standpoint of asking and answering the question, why did we stop building cities about 100 years ago? And what is the systemic implications of Trump's proposal to end that city building moratorium? So thank you, Brian. And we'll be back and explore Agenda 47 in future discussions.
See you soon.
All right.